Hello, everyone. My name is Art Gruenberger. Welcome to Meet Our Mentors. In today's episode, I'm so silly. We've been giggling so much before the broadcast, just because this particular guest cracks me up. Won't you please help me welcome Sarah Nolen? Sarah, are you there? Sarah.
Yes. Did someone call for me?
Oh no. Oh no. This is either going to be an absolute train wreck or the best episode of Meet Our Mentors ever.
Boing. Yes. I am right. Hey, Art. Thanks for having me.
Where are you? Why are you in the black pit of doom? Where are you right this very second?
I am happy to be working on a show with Shoshana Bass, and I'm at Sandglass Theater right now. And I just don't have the lighting set up, so it's all very dramatic, and there's theater curtains, so I'm in the theater setting.
Sarah Nolen, the most avant-garde puppet theater artist in the world. I'm so glad to be getting to spend a little bit of
Yeah.
time with you.
All you need to see is my head today as I talk about my mentors.
Oh yes, my mentors.
Wow.
And their heads will appear next to me momentarily. here's the head of Bart Rockerburton. Ah! And the program gets very dark all of a sudden.
Oh my gosh. I actually wanted to find some blue curtains. There he is. I wanted to buy and find some blue curtains that were just like yours, so it was like we're in the same space.
I would love that. All right, next time for episode 2 of Sarah Nolen. Sarah Nolen presents Meet Our Mentors.
I think I want to host a slam like this.
I think so. I think you have to.
Yeah.
So I got to meet you when I was touring a show through the Boston Puppet Show Place Theater, and you charmed my socks off. I just thought you were the most lovely person to chat with. And when you saw my show, and you made me very
Space Adventures.
Thank you. You made me very nervous because it's you know how uncomfortable it is to perform in front of other puppeteers, or at least it is for me. Maybe it's not for you, but for me it is. And you said nothing. You said absolutely nothing to me, and I just assumed that meant that you hated my show. So then I got to talk to you about it later, and that you said you really liked it, and I knew that I instantly liked you because you liked my show. And you're just that's what I love about visiting the show place, is just getting to chat about puppets. And so what brought you into puppets? I mean, I know you started as a kid from the pictures that you sent us. You started very early on.
A wee lass. Yeah, I think I mean I think the entry was probably puppet shorts or puppet videos for kids, or Muppets. I remember we had my little brother and I had a Muppet Weird Stuff video that we just like watched it over and over and over. I was a little too old for Sesame, but I actually loved this one video. My mom, when I had to rent it again, she was like, "We have to rent Hug a Bunch again, really?" And it was this strange like adventure of like girl goes through mirror and meets the hugga people, right?
I've never even heard of this. Was that a Muppet thing, or was that?
Now it's terrifying, but no, it wasn't a Muppet thing. I actually don't know who made the puppets, but it's fascinating. It's very surreal and really, really great. Great puppet adventure film.
So you were a fan before you picked up your first puppet then?
Yeah, and I think my mom as a teacher always worked with objects with her kids in classrooms and toys, and we did a lot of like, specifically I remember one game she had where it was big and little. It was just this bag, and there was big stuff and there was little stuff, but there was no normal size stuff, and you had to like match them together. Right? And my dad was always introducing me to really fascinating artists and um, uh, counterculture type work and love that. Thanks, Brad. Yes,
Oh my
so
goodness,
good.
Brad found that is terrifying.
They
Are you
are
kidding? I
great
am
with the rosy cheeks.
oh,
They have a
oh,
little theme song that goes, we hug, we like to hug all day.
nightmarish.
I love it.
The nightmares.
I love it.
That's awesome.
Um, yeah, yeah, good stuff. Yeah, and it's funny how you when you're a kid, it's just like, "Oh, this is totally normal." And it's not until later that you realize how deranged something you watched as a kid might be. But yeah, I really loved Muppets Tonight. I think that was also one that was really influential.
How old were you when that series aired?
It's like I want to say like 5th grade. So maybe like 11, 10, 9, 10, 10, 11. And that was yeah, I loved Muppets Tonight. I thought
It
it was
was
so much
amazing. Some of the coolest characters came out of that show. I mean,
yeah,
Bobo the Bear is still one of my all-time favorite Muppets. I mean, just such a great character. And
yeah,
who's Sal the monkey and who is his Johnny Fiammo? Like
yeah.
both of those characters were
Johnny Fiama's coming through. Yeah. And I just love that there were jokes in there that I didn't get and
yeah,
that my dad would get, right? Like
nice.
you watch it with your parent your parental unit and they would just like crack up and you have no idea what it's like, hey, what does that joke mean? And it's like, I'll tell you when you're older, you know.
I remember John Goodman, who I thought would be brilliant, was horrible because you could tell that he couldn't get the performers out of his peripheral vision. He was like so distracted by he couldn't make the puppets real. And then I think it was like Garth Brooks was on, and he was like he bought the convention completely, and he was brilliant
Yeah.
because he believed that the characters were real, or he interacted with them as if they were, and it was
Oh,
just
yeah,
brilliant.
and he
Yeah,
he wore wigs, he did the whole bit, you know, the
yeah,
whole 9 yards, so,
nice, nice.
yeah, it's funny when I think about that a lot, like, people's reaction to puppets, there's some people that are immediately in, like and sometimes I'll do auditions with kids, and some kids are, like, immediately like, "Yes, I am talking to the puppet, and we are engaged in a conversation," and sometimes they're a little uneasy or looking at for the puppeteer, and
I work with an artist, Francie Dillon. She was a children's singer, and she would sing, and I would just be sarcastic with a puppet, which was just the best job ever. And so we would go backstage after a set, and she would say the puppet's name was Gordon. She would say, "Oh yeah, Gordon seemed to be like in a mood, like sort of like." I was like, "That was me, and I'm in a mood."
yeah, yeah, I love it. I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, but Gordon can release that mood or exercise that mood, whereas you might have to practice restraint.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, mostly, mostly. So did you when you were a kid, were you playing with stuffed animals and animating stuff? Like I that's how I started, I think, is I had, like 500 teddy bears and I would just, I would be on my bed with a bunch of stuffed animals and I would just be moving them around, like kind of
Oh
just
yeah,
like playing with them, but bringing them
I
to life.
I remember we were about to go for a trip or something, and I had to have all my stuffed animals. We had to have the meeting. It's like, all right, everybody, I'm gonna go. I'll be back. You okay? Gotta take one. I can only take one. I'm sorry. That's just how it's gonna be, right? Like, and also telling stories with objects. Like I always, if we had to give a presentation for school or class, I would always find a way to, I would find a way to present with some sort of prop. So it was kind of a way for me to not be the focus of whatever that presentation was
Mm.
but still tell a story. And I thought that was really fascinating. I remember doing like a fairy tale. We had to do a fairy tale story in grade school, and I used this prop and stuffed all these garbage bags in it. And it was about the pot that kept boiling over. And so I like as I was telling the story as a fourth grader, I'm like pulling these like garbage bags all taped together, and it's just like whoa, some sort of like fun visual aid that distracted everybody from just looking at me, you know.
Pay no attention to the woman behind the plastic bags.
Exactly.
Nice.
Yeah, yeah,
Nice.
exactly.
So, did you, when you were watching puppets or when you were beginning to explore with them, did you have any idea that it could be a job, that any idea that people would, throw money at you to do the work?
It's like, when does that register, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think one thing that did register was watching the, behind the scenes Labyrinth, I think,
Mm,
and
mm,
seeing puppeteers, and I think that might have been one of the first times I saw, like, women behind the scenes in puppetry, because a lot of times it was, like, Jim Henson and Frank Oz and those puppeteers, and, so I just think that was maybe one of the first times I was like, "Oh, this is interesting." Well, and also, I don't know, I think I also was very interested in documentary filmmaking for a while. That's another place of, like, being behind the action, or, like, being a viewer, and I think being a photographer or a camera person or director of photography is very similar to puppetry for me. Like, it's the positioning, right? It's how you're watching it. It's your kind of, like, in view of the story happening, or you're capturing what parts you're interested in, or, like, your perspective and where you want it to go. Um,
I've never really thought about it like that, but yeah, it's really interesting to be off the center of the subject
Off camera.
and off camera while controlling uh only the parts that you want the audience to see. That's very much a live show, isn't it? And obviously video work as well, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I like that place. I'm very comfortable there. Even recently, I tour with shows, but I have one show where I'm present the whole time, like I think Brad calls it presenting puppeteer. Uh, and I'm and then after that doing a booth show, and I'm just like, "Oh, I love the booth. I love being in a booth. It's so comfortable and fun, and it's like you get to have this, I don't know, you have this secret. It's almost like they're watching a TV screen, but you're in the TV screen. I don't know. It's just this really interesting place. So
I love it when parents bring their children up to me and say, "Oh, this is the puppeteer," because I perform behind the curtain all the time, and the kids don't care. The kids are like, "Well, who is this guy? We didn't see him the entire show." Like, so
yeah,
what?
yeah. That's interesting. Do you do an introduction at first, or do you have because I know
I
you have the dog that comes out and does it.
Yeah, I usually will start as the audience is coming in. I'll be next to my stage because I don't want them to think that I'm trying to fool them, like, oh, I'm going to go wake up the puppets now, or I don't want to try to fool them because they know there's somebody back there, I think. So I'm visible at the beginning, and then I don't do any formal introduction. It all happens through a puppet. I do, and then I do a little demo at the end where I come out and I show the puppets, and so that's a bit of a connection. But usually it's they're there to see the puppets, and rightfully so.
Yeah. And then some kids in the front, bring out the puppets. I, yeah, I remember getting into live performance was there was some hurdling that I had some hurdles I had to hurdle, and one of those hurdles was getting used to, like, being around children, because I never was like a babysitter, or I hadn't had a lot of interaction with kids, so kids, like, kind of scared me at first, and I had done live performance but for mostly adult
Mm.
audiences, and so kids just blew me away at how honest they are. But also, anytime I had to present, I remember doing wordplay for one of the first times. I kind of am an understudy for Harry Lacoste, and that show is with Honey Good Enough,
Mm.
and I remember she was like, "Oh yeah," I mean, she's been clowning for like 10, 20 years, and she's just like, "Yeah, we're just gonna get out there dressed in these outfits and make jokes with the kids," and I'm like,
And you're like, what?
"You're gonna what?" And I just the first couple of times, it was bad. I mean, I just kind of, fell on my face, but, I messed up the jokes she fed me. It's just really funny, and then I did it a couple times where I was just, like, silent Harpo Marx,
Was that a
and that was
suggestion? Perhaps you could just be silent in the show, Sarah. Perhaps you
that
could.
was my yeah.
Ah.
But yeah,
Do you feel like you've got the hang of the children's audience now that you've spent some time behind the stage? And
always they're so funny. It's great. I'm just always surprised by the things they say because I'm always cueing or trying to bring in some interaction, some live interaction and suggestions and stuff and um I really like to pick up on things that I hear and work them into the show somehow. So that's always really fun. Like I've been doing this one shadow show for a while, and just recently, this kid yelled, "She ate the bowl!" Because Baba Yaga like eats this candy, but she just eats the entire bowl, and it's the first time someone's been like, "She ate the bowl," and it's just like so like, "Oh yeah, she did eat the bowl." It's really funny. It's just like, "Oh, why didn't I think of it?" Um, but yeah, so I really think, kids keep you on your toes.
I agree. I
Much
agree.
more than adult audiences, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think adult audiences are harder to hook. It takes a little bit longer to hook an adult audience, where a kids audience is immediately ready to engage. But
Mhm.
a kids audience will not let you get away with anything.
They will
Yeah.
follow though yeah, they will follow you, and then they will call you out on any exposition that
Yep.
does not
Yep.
make sense.
That's not funny. That doesn't make sense. How the
"But you said that the dad was gonna come back, and he didn't come back." And I was like, "Oh, who's your parent?" No.
I did 3 Billy Goat Scruff the other day in a virtual performance, and I had one kid that was stuck on the idea that the Billy Goats didn't have legs. Not because that's not okay, but because the bunny in the tortoise in the hare race did have legs.
Legs.
And so one puppet had legs and one puppet didn't have legs, and that did not compute for this kid. And I explained, well, you never see this puppet from above here, so he doesn't need them. Nope.
Wow.
Nope. That is not an
Wow.
it was great. I was
You
like,
messed
oh
up the
boy.
pattern.
You set a convention and you broke it.
I've
You
been
broke
learning yeah,
it.
it's like they're at the age where it's like, let's learn the pattern. Yeah.
That's the kid. Oh my God. Brad pulled up a picture of the child at my show,
Oh
pissed that the
boy,
goats did not have
I
legs.
hope you got a release form. But yeah, just like that idea of a kid that is and especially if they're at that age where, they're learning patterns and they're seeing, it's the one of these things is not like the other, and so they're following you. They're in tune. I think it's great.
And I think they're looking for the rules of the show as well. It's we have our stage doesn't have a lot of set pieces. In fact, usually no set pieces, but we established that up here is Tommy's house and over here is the laboratory and down here is outside and it's they're with us. There's no questioning it at all. There's not a set piece there to allow me to believe that is the laboratory, or they're just like, okay, that's the laboratory. Okay, great.
This is
Can
long as
we
you don't have a door for something else.
exactly.
Then it'd be
Ah. Let's take a look. I was watching a clip of Judy Saves the Day, and I just think this is just lovely. Brad, can we I think I have to add this
Got
to
to
the
clean and
there we go.
shop and sweep.
Let's start that clip from the beginning, Brad. There we go.
4, 3, 2, 1. Meow. Ooh. Huh? Oh. Oh. Meow. 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 Oh. 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 Achoo. Ugh. Ugh. Aha. Meow, 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 meow. Meow, meow, meow. 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 Oh. 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 Whoa. Meow.
That is just all about puppetry. Although this little girl, she saw your hand there just for a second, so I
Oh
think
yeah,
she's
I thought
that.
the same
I,
thing.
I love it. Just so like cat and the tail, and what do you do with a cat and a tail? And that's just such a great little introduction. It's so much fun. How did you get the tail to like? What was the little mechanism that you had in that one tail to get it to go whoop whoop?
Spring in a string, Art.
Spring,
Classic.
spring in a string.
Yeah, so it's put that spring in. There is like a little fishing line coming down, and there's two tails. So there's the mechanized one, and then there's the one that's attached to the cat body.
Yeah, yeah,
But yeah.
fun, fun. Does the cat make another appearance later on in the show, or is that it for the cat?
The other day she did, because the kids were like, walk the cat, because Judy like talks about walking the cat all the show, and so finally I was like, all right, I'll walk the cat if you let me finish. So we took a little like Judy and cat walk after. It's really fun.
Nice,
Um,
nice. On the catwalk.
Yeah, but the cat is kind of the Punch and Judy clown character who comes out and sweeps the stage. So it's just like, what are those for? Especially Judy Saves the Day. What are those traditions that are now like flipped? And in traditional Punch and Judy, it's usually a dog, Toby. I could have gotten a live cat, which would have been great. That's the next step. But touring with a live cat. But this will do, especially with the whole like feminist Punch and Judy show. The pussy hat, all that is there. Nancy
Yeah.
said the hat. Yeah, the hat.
Yay, Nancy.
Very important.
So as I was looking through all of the different photos and videos that you sent, you're in that stage of exploration of a million different types of puppetry, and that's fantastic. So I know, I mean, we're 25 minutes in and we haven't talked about a single mentor, although we did bring up Bart Rockaburton's head for a moment. So we've got something, but can you talk a little bit? Ooh, there it is again. Can you talk a little bit about what is pulling you all over the place through all of the various styles of puppetry that you're doing, and what are I know mentors is a loaded term, because it's like, oh, did you have someone that took you from the very beginning and has led you through? That's not my experience, and I don't think that was yours as well. But the mentors that I had taught me one or two things that I carry with me today into every single bit of puppetry that I do, whether I'm directing a big show or whether I'm doing just a one-person kid show. I'm remembering those things. What are some of those things for you?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I loved, because I called you and I was like, there's been so many people that I've just leapfrogged, to over the many years. And I think that, it's just those one or two. I've never had that official. I've done internships, but never that official, like, you are my apprentice, come along. But I do feel like I have gotten under the wing of a lot of different folks over the years and learned a ton. And sometimes that takes a bit of trust to get there. I think I was thinking about, what is that trajectory? And I think for me, it's always been about visual storytelling. Even visual art can have a root in there. And I think my dad was a really big early influence on just someone who, brought home and introduced me to a ton of different artists and styles, and also how to look at art. I mean, one thing my dad would do is we'd go places, and I would just get overwhelmed and think, well, I can't comment on this, or I can't think about this piece. And I remember specifically one time we were in a museum, and there was like an art piece that was curled up of fireman's hose on the wall, but lower. And my dad was like, "Oh, look, it's fire department toilet paper," and it was just like that moment of like, oh, like they could be meaning something else, like they could be intending something else, but your own, like what you take up from it is also important. So I think I'm always thinking about that in my own shows, is like, okay, I have this intention for this, but is it actually coming through in the audience, right? And I think that's really important. And so my dad was a graphic designer, and so that also came in handy a lot, is like, what is the, even with logo design and puppetry, Paul Vincent Davis was a graphic designer. It's just like that design element of like, how many shapes do you need to get this across, right? How to like visually tell or explain something. And I think about that a lot. And then, going from Austin to Dallas, I'm from Texas, and Austin was a very like, oh, like how hippie cowboy culture, like lots of like musicians and
What do they have? Is it North by Northwest, the big art show that they've got there? Is that
they have South by Southwest.
South by South? I was close,
No, you were,
just in the other direction.
the Denton, which is a little north of Austin, now has North by Southwest, so it gets all the South by Southwest runoff, which is really great. And then going to film school in Dallas, I think even though I was pursuing film, I was actually really interested in doing puppetry, because in high school I had been making all these like puppet videos, but I realized that I was like, oh, I need to make better films, and because I was really interested in going into children's television. And so I thought, well, I'll go to film school, of course, and I'll be better at filming my puppets. And so going into film school, that was a bit of that's where I really fell in love with camera work, and doing like being the director of photography, and working with 16 millimeter, and that's also like that visual medium, and like montage theory and all that stuff, I think also blends into puppetry, especially screenwriting. I thought, taking a screenwriting class is for me, that translates so well to writing a puppet play, because the action and dialogue are separate, right? And you really are, when you're screenwriting, you're also, yeah, you're thinking about the dialogue, but you're also thinking about what is happening in the scenes, and what the actors are doing, and what are people, what are the things you're cutting to that mean something, and so I think that's all wrapped up in there.
When you're writing, are you also including the motivations of characters, or where no,
I'm
just
not. Yeah,
yeah,
I just the facts. That's what I
yeah.
love, and that's what Kelly Hurd taught us, is just like just the facts, and it all comes through the metaphor and what you're showing, and the audience takes that to heart, and I think that is a really great way to approach puppetry as well. It's like the age old show me, don't tell me. Yeah, and I think that's what puppets do so well. They could be talking about anything, but you can really see how they
Yeah,
feel about it.
absolutely, absolutely. So who were some of the mentors in your puppetry life?
I would say, moving from Dallas and going to film school, the first dip into the puppet pool was when my junior year. I was really intrigued with puppetry, but I didn't know how to find it in Austin. I didn't know how to find it in Dallas, and so I went and just searched up like puppet workshops online, and I came across Sandglass Theater's workshop with Eric and Inez Zeller Bass, and did their. Then it was, I think, a 3-week intensive, in
Wow.
2008. And so I flew up to Vermont. No, I flew up to Connecticut because they actually had it at the University of Connecticut in 2008. Yay! And so crazy because I'm here right now.
Are you inside that very building?
Yes, exactly. So
That's awesome.
it's very full circle. So yeah, so that is 2008, and we actually did the workshop at the University of Connecticut. And Eric and Inez were just both amazing, like two powerhouses of thought and experience, and just I think uh, from Inez, just she taught kind of some of the construction and manipulation, and Eric had every day this conceptual time. So we would just sit and like talk about, well, why puppets? And I was just like, well, why not? And it's just like, well, no, there is this beautiful work of reasoning for it, like this, finding stories and finding ways to do a puppet show where it has to be done in puppets. And I think that's a really fun place for me because I love finding the framework and the rules. I love limits. I mean, I think that's what film does too. It's like you've got this square, and whatever you fill it with, that's your world. And I think it's similar with puppetry, but they introduced me to more the material thinking around that, right? And what materials are you using, and how does that relate to the dynamics between puppeteer and puppet, which I had never thought of before. I was like, oh, but you never see the puppeteer. And that was a total introduction to a new style, which is table tap. And then I was hooked, And I actually auditioned for Charleville Mézières, that school in France, and did not get in, but I did go back and like volunteer for Puppetry in the Green Mountains Festival, Puppets in the Green Mountains Festival in 2011. And that's when I met Jamie and Bonnie from Crabgrass Puppets. And they have been a huge influence on me since 2011, and they're really wonderful. Yay!
There they are,
And
and there they are.
they are the working puppeteers that I go to for like feedback. I mean, Jamie is such a great. He came and saw Judy, and immediately we went out and gave me feedback, and it's just like, oh, that's so. It's not lacking. It's just like you remembering to ask for that and finding those. There's so few in a way that can like that know this world, that can go out with you and like give you that feedback of what you're doing and what's working and what they saw. And boy, I cherish that.
Yeah, you can get somebody to come up to you and say, that was the best puppet show I've ever seen. You're like, oh, how many puppet shows have you seen? Oh, 2.
Exactly. It's not,
Thank you. But yeah, when you have someone who's got the eye and the experience and knows what they're looking for, that can be incredibly valuable.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I know you and I were talking about sort of landing on an aesthetic, but I mean, I think Jamie and Bonnie are a great example of an evolution over the course of a career of style after style after style, not just how their puppets looked, but the different styles in which they used throughout all of their different shows.
Yeah. And I feel very like connected to something Bonnie said in the Meet Our Mentors podcast, which was, what is the thing that drives the show? Like, and then you find that hook, and that's your rule, or that's your framework, or that's how you build that's the root of everything that you're building around, and that really helps kind of keep it as a self-contained thing. And that's how I view my shows, is they are a bit all over the place. But they're each one is its own world, right? And this one doesn't look like this one. There's there would be no crossover. No way. But yeah. it makes it hard to use. I can't use puppets for this puppet for this show, or trade that around.
It does make it harder to interchange puppets.
Oh, I have to build an entirely new stage and an entirely new cast.
You're
Uh,
working way too hard, Sarah. That's all I have to say.
but it's for the art.
All right, perhaps you're working just hard enough then.
But yeah, and then I think after sandglass and getting out of film school, it was just like, oh well, how do I get back there? How do I get back to working in puppetry somehow? And I had been trying. I thought, well, there was a way into television puppetry or the kids media space, and I just couldn't find it. But I did find reality television, and I worked in reality television for a couple of years. And that's where I learned a lot of just professionalism, work ethic, and I realize now, being a touring puppeteer, it's like, oh, reality television is just like puppetry. It's like every morning you put everything in the van, you schlep the van, you unload everything, you do the work, and then you pack it back in. So
What reality TV show were you working on?
I worked on Gator 911 in Beaumont, Texas.
Gator 9. Is that like these guys going out and chasing gators? Is it exactly what you
like Manhattan? Like, there were like, gators are a nuisance problem in Beaumont, so they would go out and they would like wrangle these gators. They would get gators out of a pool or a pond, and then either like take them back out to the wild or put them in their own like gator country.
Was that a spinoff of? Wasn't there some show in Texas
This
about like
was
wild hogs or something? Or
yes, we shot a sizzle for that one. I don't know if
really?
to talk about it, but it did go. It eventually went to A&E, and it was Wild Hogs or something. So yeah, I remember getting up at 4 a.m. and tromping through. Where was it? Somewhere in Texas, with these women who chased hogs. So we didn't get that show, but then I worked on 2 seasons of Donna Decorates Dallas, which was an HGTV show, and that was a blast. That
Wow.
was a really great crew. You're just like, you become a family. That's what I really loved about those years is, you're working on a crew, you're working as a team. You're getting to know each other. You're learning to anticipate everybody's needs. So I was a production coordinator, so I think that really helped with now moving into more of a director space, just being able to anticipate problems and needs, and create a nice working environment for everybody.
Nice.
Yeah. And
So
then and then moving into, after a couple of years of reality TV, being like, wow, my puppets aren't that good. Because I was doing improv at night. I was like, even though I was doing all this day work as a reality coordinator, at night I would go to the Dallas Comedy House and take classes and learn what it was like to be on stage, which was terrifying for someone who likes to be behind the camera. And that's when I started to bring puppetry back. So yeah, that's Amanda.
who's the
She's amazing. She started the Dallas Comedy House, which is no more because pandemic. But it was a great place to learn and have a first dip into a theater space, even if it's kind of a rough and tumble theater space, but it is a way to like learn games. And I think that improv also like connected to this storytelling is well, what are the bare bones of what you need to tell a story? And that, yeah, there's one of my first teachers was Clayton Hartley on the left, and he one thing he said in a class was, if this, then what? And I think that I apply that to puppetry all the time, because it's like, okay, what's the pattern you're making in your show, in your story, in your materials? It's like, if, so like my story, in one of my shows, I do object puppetry. So Fairy Tailer, I have Little Red Riding Hoodie, and it's all coats, right? So it's like, oh, well, if, Little Red Riding Hood is a hoodie, then the wolf is a fur coat. if the wolf is fur coat, then grandma's a nightgown. Then, you know, like what are all of the rules you're setting up for yourself to build the world? So that's yeah, I learned a lot doing those, going through that year-long program.
This is the show that you were just talking about. What's the name of the show?
Oh, the fairy tailor.
The Fairy Tailor.
Yes.
I was watching a clip of this earlier this afternoon, and it was like Little Red Riding Hood is not just a hoodie, but she's this tiny, tiny little, like that has to be like a 2T hoodie, right?
Yeah.
With a little moving mouth mechanism in the inside of the hood.
Yeah.
No
Yeah.
eyes, I don't think, just the hood,
Oh,
which
just
is
the
perfect.
hoodie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the wolf is this great fur coat, like with like a wolf sort of head at the very top. And when you pull everyone out, spoiler alert, you unzip the coat to
Yeah.
pull everyone out, and it was yeah, it's just very very clever, right? It's like there's the hook.
Yeah. It's a fun game to play because it's also that like uh I love finding puppet traditions and taking them into a new space. So I've always loved, you know, the classic like hand puppet Red Riding Hood, and then the wolf comes and eats grandma and it's like no when she's gone, right? Because of the playboard. But with this, you know, you actually get to have the coat eat little red because
Yeah,
the coat
we actually see you shove Little Red sort of down the wolf coat's mouth, which is
eat his mouth.
brilliant to see. I mean,
Yeah,
how else are you going to get it in there?
exactly. Exactly. But it's really it's fun. It's a fun show.
And that's one of those shows where you're completely exposed because you're the tailor, and that's your hook, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a it's hard. It's a hard show. I love it, but it is very vulnerable. Like I feel very vulnerable in that it's like because I am not a stage classically trained stage person. So I'm like trying to throw as much focus as I can to, you know, whatever play space I'm in. So there's like 3 play spaces in that show. And but it's very it's my first real like touring show. So it's a little overbuilt. I overbuilt it just a bit. So that's the thing with these shows. It's like I can't wait to build it again, you know?
Well, you almost have to overbuild your first 3 or 4 shows to learn the lesson of not overbuilding a show. I mean, I think that's, you know. And then once you drift into uh minimalism for a while, you'll start to, at least I've started to drift back towards, well, what if we were to add this? And what if we were to add a projector? And what if we were to add it where, so, I mean, I'm seeing sort of like a
What
de-evolution
is a
of,
fog machine these days?
I know, like I could get one of those and that's not
Yeah,
so hard to lug around, right? You could fly with a fog machine in the overhead compartment, right? Is that?
right, right. Ah, the liquid. Hmm. Yeah, I think you're right. It is a move into minimalism if you can't tell. Minimalist space is what I'm looking for. But yeah, I think you know, after you know, UConn that's the thing going to the University of Connecticut, it introduced me to just a ton of information and people and practices and techniques. And I was there you know 2012, so I moved from Dallas to
And did
Connecticut
you get your master's there? Did you get your bachelor's
and
there?
I have my
Which,
master's.
yeah,
Yes, I have my
yeah.
master's. My bachelor's is in film. And so that uh it was great because after a couple of years of reality television I was just like this is enough, I need to call Bart. And I had Bart's phone number in my phone from Sandglass. So one day I was just on set and I was like, I can't take this anymore. Bart. And he picked up. It was so funny. But yeah, so he's good. But yeah, Bart taught like, you know, a lot of the technical classes, but also, you know, production and you know, laying up budgets and things like that. But I think one of the takeaways was just the process of critique, you know, the process of showing something and then getting feedback. And it I was used to that with like editing, but I hadn't experienced that yet as a performer. And so that was, especially with improv, it's like, oh, you just do it once and then you're done, right? Well, no. So that was a new space to be in, and Bart was really a great mentor and
He's got the ability to ask. I've experienced this at the O'Neill. He's got the ability to ask the right questions and to point out the right things and to get you to begin to think about your piece in a slightly different way, which is helpful.
And he still has the, that magical twinkle in his eye about puppetry. He still loves it and loves making. I mean, one of the things that I love that he said while building or carving or sculpting a puppet is, at some point you say, ah, there you are. Just that idea of like a puppet appearing at some point in the process, which is really lovely.
What part is your favorite process, or what part of the process is your favorite part? Are you a builder at heart? Are you the design, or when you finally begin to rehearse, where's your passion in it?
I don't know. I think I love the space of solving problems creatively or like uniquely, or posing. It might be the framework. It might be that initial devising. I think that's one thing that I took away from my time at the University of Connecticut, was because I was also there with Anna Fitzgerald.
Mm.
Anna Fitzgerald, I would say, is a huge influence on me, because she basically brought me into the space of devising, which kind of combined. That's her great headshot. It kind of combined this. We worked on her MFA show, which was Reverse Cascade, which is all object puppetry, and she basically like came into the room, and I had never done this process before, where the director comes in, has the kind of formula or the outline and the breakdown and the objects, and like sets up the framework for you. And then and then the team starts to kind of fill it in. She's prompting us and saying, this is where we want to get to. Now let's play. Right. And I thought that was, wow, that was so fun, because yes, you're improvising a little, but you're also writing as you go. So it was just this kind of culmination of all these things. And yeah.
So she knew like point A to point B and then point B to point C, but there was space in between those that you had to sort of say, how do we get from here to there? Or
yeah, it was kind of like one of the very first days was like, okay, we just want to see circus tricks with these objects. Like how can these objects be circus tricks? And so we'd go off and devise and work, and then we'd show. And then that's when that taught me, like, everything is an idea. Like you just take everything you see, and there's ways to combine it and thread it and weave it. And I think that's a really fun space to be.
Mm-hmm.
Love devising. It's really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
That's us figuring out how to make a object puppet juggle, because the character Judy is a clown who is diagnosed with MS, multiple sclerosis, and it kind of renders her unable to juggle and do her clown act that she's been renowned for so long. And that routine, we had these three juggling balls that were actually characters, and they provided a lot of humor throughout the show, because they were vocalizing, and also at one point she does juggle, and we have like, it takes like 4 or 5 people to make this puppet actually juggle. And yeah,
it was a beautiful piece. I forget which national festival you guys performed it at. Was it
yeah, I was on
Connecticut?
I was on the devising team, but she's had a lot of different people perform it. I was involved in the international tour where we took it to Turkey. So we did go to
fun.
a festival in Turkey, and that was really wonderful.
Neat.
Yeah, and then since I've devised on a lot of other people's work, so I really enjoy coming into that space as a deviser, and helping folks out, because I feel like I'm there to, I don't know, help people out. It's a great place to be.
And it is, because the pressure isn't on you as the director or as the ultimate creator of the piece. When I went and worked with Shadowlight, it was the same thing. It was the most relaxing thing, because I would be pounding my head up against, the playboard trying to figure out my show. And then I
Mm,
would go and I would rehearse with Shadowlight on, their big gigantic shadow screens. And I
mm,
would just play. I was like, oh, what if a puppet did this? Or what if we had the shiny thing bending this way? What would that do? And it was
yeah,
so much fun to
yeah,
get to play in someone else's space.
that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also really love, I think I'm getting into a space where I really love hand puppetry. I think hand puppetry is real. After doing Judy Saves the Day, I'm finding I enjoy it more and more. And
What is it about it? What do you think it is about it that
I think
that's
it's
gotcha?
being I think it's the one-way mirror. It's like the idea of being behind a scrim and being able to incorporate things that, oh, there's all the little curtain doing,
Mm.
poetry. And being able to see, the kids react and hear them, but they think that they can't hear you or see you, and then you say, "Ah, thanks, that one kid over there," or call people out, and they're like, "Oh, me?" I think that's really fun because it's like, "Yes, I see you." But yeah, I'm enjoying that a lot, you know.
It
And the comedy of and learning all these puppet tricks. I mean, that's one of my favorite things about being part of Puppet Show Police Theater is just getting this master class in touring puppet shows because seeing all these shows that come through and getting to see new shows. Yay! Brad opened I Love Tacos. It was so good last weekend. And so yeah, I think just and understanding that there are these games and Paul Vincent Davis, seeing some of his shows on in the records has been really great. Actually, when I got there, Paul was able to see two of my shows, and he, gave that we had that feedback session, right? And it was really wonderful to have that as an experience to have the master say, no, when you fake so you need to tug it at the end there, you know.
Leona says, maybe you remember my mother, Leona Madsen, who was the educational consultant for P of A. She did a lot of juniors workshops. Neat. That's
Oh,
awesome.
okay. But yeah, I think just the games involved in puppet shows, and I just love seeing new tricks that people are coming up with, and I mean it's always inspiring.
New tricks that have been around since the
I know.
invention of puppetry, right?
Well,
I,
I mean, it's the chase. It's like there's the Looney Tune style, which you totally do, and
yeah,
see,
Looney
that's
Tunes / Scooby Doo, absolutely.
funny.
And
And it's also like
my mentor did that. I mean, he taught me those chases, and then I was like, okay, well now these chases are in my show, so am I lifting stuff out of his show? But then I saw this Balinese puppeteer do the exact same bits. He's right behind you bits, and the chase bits, and it was like right out of Looney Tunes Scooby Doo. So it's
right.
just that classic vaudevillian sort of comedy
And
ridiculousness.
I don't think that registered with me until after UConn because University of Connecticut, you're kind of learning everything. You're learning the craft, but specifically touring puppet shows for families, that aesthetic and the traditions involved are uh, long standing. But you don't see them until you start seeing the patterns, right? You start seeing the patterns of people's shows. It's like, oh, they did a peekaboo in a new way, you know, uh, or or using things like I remember seeing a Greater Arizona Puppet Theater
Yeah, yeah.
out there. They have their Cinderella. So good.
That's a masterclass in hand puppetry, isn't it?
The
I mean, that
Cinderella
show.
Switch, the songs, man. There's some really great shows out there. So I love seeing new shows. I love seeing kids shows and
Yeah.
people doing.
I,
And I think going into doing Punch and Judy, I watched a ton of Punch and Judy shows. Hey Donald, I watched a ton of Punch and Judy shows online on YouTube and started seeing the formula played out over and over and over. And I think what that did was made me realize oh, but within all of these professors that are doing the same formula, it's like, who do I gravitate towards, and what's the comedy that I like? And I found one or two professors that I really wanted to emulate. And
Like, clearly your influence is slightly more Italian because of the rhythmic nature that you have, like the dance with the spoon that you have with
yeah,
Judy is like, I'd seen so many Punch and Judy shows that didn't include that. And then I saw my first one and I felt like, oh, this is Punch and Judy. This is actually where they're using their puppet stage and the puppets as instruments to beat out their own rhythm. And I love that you incorporated that into Judy
and
Saves the Day.
that's all over modern times. Justin and Rose do that all the time too. Theirs is so musical, and I'd seen theirs before, and I
Mm.
really loved the music involved in that and the percussion, because that's the other thing. It's like one of the complaints about Punch and Judy is that it's violent. It's so violent, but it's all and it is. But if you take that and turn it into more of a percussion, or if you twist it into music, it kind of dampens it lightens the mood just a little. Not that it like
Absolutely.
makes any violence okay, but it changes what you're doing from dramatic to musical.
Absolutely. And when you're drumming on your stage with the spoon and then Judy gets whacked in the face with a spoon, it's not like, oh, she's getting abused or something. No, it's like that's
No, it's a
hysterical. It's
metaphor.
like it's
The smacking of the spoon is like her domestic life is even her spoon is beating her up.
I would
Like,
say that's a meta 5. It's so big. It's just much bigger than a metaphor.
right? So it's interesting too, like doing a show like that, because you do get some feedback, some positive and intense feedback from families. And I think if you find out what is actually triggering that, like what is the thing you're doing that is too much or too far, and then if you change one thing, it changes the show, or it changes. And I think that's what I'm finding still with some of the musical moments
Hmm.
and watching it. I think it's really important to watch your own shows too. It's hard, but yeah.
Yeah.
If
That's
if
what that's
other
been
people have to, you should too.
the clip we showed from Judy Saves the Day was you were doing that virtually, right? That was a virtual performance because we
Yeah, that
couldn't.
was a virtual show, so you're not getting you're missing the laughter and the feedback.
Were you watching a monitor during that show though? Because that's been something that's been very interesting to perform a lot of our live shows virtually, and I'm on monitor now more than I ever. I mean, I'm never on monitor when I'm out doing a show live, but now I'm watching my stuff as it's happening and honing and directing and changing and trying to find those moments, and it's really fun to do. It's been a really neat exploration.
Yeah, I think with the streaming, I've enjoyed more being back in the camera person's seat, and finding and when we set up Puppet Show Plays Theater as kind of a streaming station, I was able to do two camera setups and finding those moments to pop in, or have a live camera switching experience. But yeah, when I'm doing a show, I think some of the wider it's more fun to have a wider shot for those action packed sequences and those runs and chases, and then close-ups for those more poetic moments. And
You weren't controlling the camera during that show, were you? Were you switching the
I
cameras from the?
have no, I
Yeah.
think that was actually Roxy Myram did that,
Mm.
which was yay, Roxy. Roxy's
Yay,
another
Roxy.
great influence, great mentor. And I wanted to go back because Brad had put up that photo of Alelu Curtin, and I wanted to say that the one little like nugget that I got from her, I think is about puppetry as a community in general, in that spirit of puppetry. She did uh, she's since passed away, but in 2012 came to Yukon and did a forum. And in that forum, she talked about her dining room table and how important it was for her and her husband, John, to have a big table so they could always host puppeteers and feed them. and
Mm.
and be a center and a place and a hearth for that touring performer, or just the community in general that might be passing through. And I think, I I really admire, and that stuck with me, just that spirit of of helping and
And that's really what you experienced at Puppet Show Place. I mean, or at least when I got to go and be there, it felt like, oh, a new puppeteer's in town. And so some of the puppeteers from around would sort of come in and hang out. And it was that sort of spirit of, with somebody always coming out to the backyard of Puppet Show Place and telling us to be quiet because we're, being such jackasses and loud out there and there's neighbors. But it was like that was that sense of like that around the dining room table of getting
Yeah.
to fellowship with other puppeteers. That's what I love about this program, is getting to sit down and just have a conversation with something that you're passionate about, clearly, and that I'm passionate about as well. I think that's really neat. And we've been talking for an hour. This is the longest Meet Our Mentors ever, and I could talk to you for another hour. I could. And we
I
could
have
do
so many other mentors, but I know,
All right, so list all of your mentors now in the next 30 seconds. Go.
Tim Spurlock, Tim Dickey, I would say David Stevens.
Oh, credits are rolling. Sorry.
Oh,
Oh,
no.
sorry. We're all out of
Oh,
we'll roll the credits and then we'll go to black, and then you'll come back and you're still Sarah. Oh, there she is. All right, great. Well, Sarah, it's been lovely talking with you. I gotta tell you, I am so excited to see what you do next, and I am thrilled to be on the planet at the same time as you are engaged in puppetry. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I'm really excited to see what you do next. No pressure.
I really appreciate that coming from you. I mean, I'm so glad that I'm on Earth when you had your 6-week workshop you did, that I was able to take. I mean, that was so helpful, and you as a mentor on just the like get it done side. Yeah, I'm like, what would Art do?
Oh boy. All right. Well, that's a conversation for
you.
another day. Yeah, you bet. Hey, everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. This is Sarah Nolen. If you haven't seen her work, go and find where she's doing shows and see her work. We are going to take a couple of month break from Meet Our Mentors, but in September, we're going to I think it's the Great Puppet Train Festival in Iowa. And we're going to live stream, hopefully, if the internet is working in Iowa. I hear it sometimes does and sometimes doesn't, but hopefully we're going to be streaming. And I get to talk to one of my favorite people in the entire world, Jim Napolitano of Nappy's Puppets. We are going to be talking about his career. Yeah, right. And the mentors that helped him along the way. I imagine that we'll talk a little bit about Super Kangaroo. I sure hope so. Sarah, don't go anywhere after we wrap this up so we can do a debrief. Thank you for joining us, everyone. My name is Art Gruenberger. That's Sarah Nolen. We are Meet Our Mentors. Bye, Sarah. Bye.